Let's move down. We talked about non-cash items that are sitting in net income, and we're making adjustments here. Things we looked at: depreciation, amortization, different types of reserve expenses, losses, gains that are non-operating, stock compensation, and deferred tax expense and benefits. So those would be some of the things that you might see. You may not see them all, but you may see some of them. So let's keep going. And let's think about our operating accounts. Now we want to bring out our little 2x2 again. Right? And really we're just going to be following this little 2x2. This is what we look at. After we've pulled out any of the non-cash items, like in accounts receivable net, we need to pull out depreciation expense. That's got to come out. That's here. And then we look at the net change after we pull out depreciation, the bad debt expense. So we can take this little 2x2 and we can fill in what's going to happen here. So let's start with what happens when we have an operating liability, let's say payables. So we have payables. Whatever the payable is. And we'll designate that we've got a net increase in the payable, or we have a net decrease in the payable. And we'll have that offset this way. So what do I do with my proxy when I have an increase in my payable? When I have an increase in my payable, I'm going to increase the proxy. So when we're increasing this payable, we're going to see an increase to the proxy. And when we see a decrease in the payable, we're going to see a decrease to the proxy. This is consistent with our little 2x2. We're just trying to kind of logically go through this. We can say the same, the deferred revenue, any deferred revenue account should be the same. We're going to have an increase. We're going to have decreases. And when we see an increase in deferred revenue, we're going to see an increase in the proxy. And if we see a decrease in deferred revenue, we're going to see a decrease in the proxy, because this is an operating liability. Right? You can fill in the rest, I'm sure, but we're going to do it. Right? So what happens when you have operating assets? So you have receivables. All right, again, we're looking at increases and decreases. Right? So if we have an increase in a receivable, we have an increase in an operating asset. What do we do to the proxy? We decrease it. Here we're going to decrease the proxy. And if we have a decrease in the receivable, we're going to increase the proxy. And the last one is prepaids. And increase. Decrease. And same behavior. So after we go through and we're just, and all this is doing all of these things, all of these steps, all this is doing, it's taking my accrual net income or loss, and it is adjusting it to go from my estimate of operating cash flows to what is a better estimate of operating cash flows. So after we sum all this up, some of the parts here, this is operating cash flows.